Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. Craig Mish back with you here on this Monday. We're getting ready for March Madness Conference Championships ahead. The baseball season begins coming up very shortly. And of course, NFL free agency is getting underway. Thanks for being part of our show today. Should be a fun program as we get into the latest news notes in the NFL. We got a lot of news to get to here. We'll start off with that in just a minute. And also Jacob Camenker will be with us from Sporting News, but also a special guest here on the show today. Former big league manager Buck Showalter is with us to preview the National League East and, of course, go over the very latest with himself and also in Major League Baseball as well. Also guest contributor today from Legal Sports Report, in addition to finding out the very latest as to what sports betting will look like in the great state of North Carolina. Folks, it all begins today. We are less than 60 minutes away. The countdown is on, folks. North Carolina is legalizing sports betting, which you may have heard here on the show, and it starts at noon Eastern today. 8 different operators are open for business in North Carolina ahead of the NCAA tournament, ahead of the conference championships. Of course, the big game between Duke and North Carolina going on this weekend. And we're going to find out more about that in less than 30 minutes from now. What it may look like, who's making the first bets, which operators are underway. A landmark day in North Carolina with sports betting being legal. Also, we found out late last night, in fact, you can actually call it today, that Russell Wilson has picked his next destination when free agency officially opens in the middle of the week. He is going to be quarterbacking, whether he is starting or on the bench, I have no idea. I'm guessing starting, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He went on social media yesterday and posted a Styx song, Renegade, and there it is. So Russell Wilson's going to be playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now that sort of sent other things into a little bit of a shockwave here, because The Athletic is reporting that when the discussion is able to happen in less than 90 minutes from now, because the non-tampering window, whatever, opens up in the NFL, can't officially sign anybody, but you can talk just like Russell Wilson is talking to the Steelers, that Kirk Cousins is going to be talking to the Atlanta Falcons. This is according, again, to The Athletic. No signing yet, just a rumor, so to speak, as it pertains right now. But keep an eye on that throughout the day. We may find out that Kirk Cousins picks his next destination, which would mean the Vikings have an opening as well. How about that? Buccaneers will not have an opening. It is official that Baker Mayfield is returning to Tampa Bay. He signs a 3-year contract, $100 million when this opens up on Wednesday, $50 million guaranteed. T. Higgins, who was hit with the franchise tag, told ESPN today that he is frustrated over contract negotiations and has requested a trade. So could it be the end for T. Higgins with the Cincinnati Bengals? Remains to be seen. Mac Jones is no longer a member of the New England Patriots. He was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a late-round pick. He'll back up Trevor Lawrence. And also the Chicago Bears are shifting their plans away from the Dome Stadium at Arlington Heights. The new plan is to invest $2 billion to fund a publicly owned lakefront stadium in Chicago. So the Bears could be getting a new stadium, and fans will be happy with this because some people were not really all into the Arlington Heights location. We'll see if they like this one a little bit better. Naturally, the big story this morning on the early line was Russell Wilson picking his destination in Pittsburgh, and Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside were talking about this morning. Not completely clear as to whether or not Russell Wilson is guaranteed the starting job in Pittsburgh and what it could potentially mean for the future, given the fact that the Steelers were a pretty good team last year without him.
As a new quarterback, a new starting quarterback, that is the conversation. Russell Wilson intends to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers when the league year becomes official on Wednesday. Vet minimum deal, just a 1-year deal for $1.2 million after a huge contract in Denver. Russ isn't too concerned with the figures, just an opportunity to resurrect his career after a disastrous 2-year run in the Mile High City.
And also, let's take a look at what actually happened over the weekend, because we were reading that Russell Wilson was in New Jersey at Newark Airport because he had a meeting with the New York Giants. Similar scenario to what we're seeing there out in Pittsburgh, layover there. Similar to seeing what we're actually, going with who's that starting quarterback going to be. Because Daniel Jones coming back, nobody wants him here for the Giants. Not even the Giants want that guy back. So it's interesting that he got out of town. But also, same scenario with Kenny Pickett, who's much more affordable if you could sit him on the bench as opposed to a $40 million contract in Daniel Jones. Now, you take a look moving forward at what makes sense here. The FanDuel Sportsbook, and again, my memory isn't so great, but I know it wasn't an 11-1 price last week for the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the division. And you say, well, Donnie, if you're not that excited about Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh, you got more competent, which is what you got here. If you take that exact same Russell Wilson last year from the Denver Broncos, who didn't have great numbers but still had respectable numbers, and put him on the Steelers, who every quarterback had horrendous numbers, you're a better football team right away.
We'll see if that is indeed the case. Training camp opens in several months. The NFL draft coming your way in less than a couple of months. Now, the NCAA tournament and the conference tournaments are coming up fast. The Boilermakers win again over the weekend, and they announce in the process that Zach Edey's number 15 jersey is going to be retired. He's been one of their best players in franchise history, let's be honest. 78-70, they win on Sunday, 25 points, 14 rebounds. Now, this is a big story potentially heading into the next game that these teams play. 6 women ejected from an SEC championship game after South Carolina and LSU were in a tussle in the fourth quarter. The Gamecocks won the game 79-72. A lot of players came off the bench here. There could be some suspensions. Who knows will be available for their next game. Caitlin Clark, number 3 Iowa, they defeat Nebraska and clinch the Big Ten title 94-89. And North Carolina beat Duke to clinch the ACC title in the regular season. They'll play their conference tournament coming up this week. In the NBA, Luka Doncic over the weekend becomes the first player to record 6 consecutive 30-point triple-doubles. The Mavericks pull away in the second half. They beat the Pistons 142-124 on Saturday night. The NBA has fined Rudy Gobert $100,000 for making that Johnny Manziel money gesture over the weekend, saying the refs were stealing the game. Yikes. The Rockets' leading scorer, Alperen Sengun, ends up undergoing an MRI on his right knee and ankle. We'll see what the outcome of that is. And the 76ers and Knicks played one of the more dreadful games you'll see in the NBA in a long time. 152 combined points, lowest scoring game since 2016. In baseball, spring training rolls on. A couple of weeks left until the regular season begins. The Orioles, no surprise, named Corbin Burns the starter for opening day. Cubs pitcher Jamison Tyon's going to have more tests on his back, Craig Counsell said on Sunday morning. In Bay Hill, the Arnold Palmer Invitational goes to Scotty Scheffler. He played great from start to finish. He ends up winning the Invitational. And over in the NHL, Colorado Avalanche forward Logan O'Connor is undergoing season-ending hip surgery. He's been injured for the majority of the season for the Avalanche. Well, coming up next, we got plenty to get to here on the show as Kirk Cousins decided to leave Minnesota potentially and go to the Atlanta Falcons. What about Russell Wilson's decision to go to Pittsburgh? Is T. Higgins trying to force his way out of Cincinnati? So much to unpack based on the information this morning. And coming up next, our friend Jacob Camenker is going to join us from the Sporting News. And if baseball is your thing, you'll want to stay tuned because 20 minutes from now, one of the best managers you'll ever see put on the jersey, Buck Showalter, is going to join us on the show and give us a preview as to what he thinks for the upcoming season. I also want to catch up with Buck and see what his plans are for this year, where he's going to be on TV, radio, and everywhere else. So stay tuned for that. More NewsWires coming up next. Don't go away.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is
the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But
Right.
if we make them a third,
They get in.
This
is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's going to be a busy couple of days for those people covering the NFL like our show, and for Jacob Camenker, who does it for sporting news as well. And it's a lot of refreshing, I think, on social media. It sounds familiar with baseball free agency. At least I wish that's what baseball free agency is, but it's not. We don't have to refresh. You just sit and wait and wait. Still got free agents unsigned. Anyway, I guess we wouldn't have had that, Jacob. I mean, think about it. We got Blake Snell, who's still a free agent. I wouldn't have predicted that, like, for example, Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley would sign before Blake Snell. But here we are, and that's dynamic as to what's going on in the NFL, where it's going to take center stage here for the next few days.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking at the differences between that one and baseball. Baseball used to be the hot stove. Now it's the slow burning one. The NFL has this so-called legal tampering period, which is an oxymoron, I think, or a contradiction of itself, that begins today. So teams are allowed to start talking to guys. They can officially sign contracts starting on Wednesday, but we're going to get a flurry of news once that period opens up at noon Eastern here. So excited to see how things shake out here, but it's going to be fast moving as always.
Yeah, I'm kind of tempted here to go with the rumors before the facts. I'm not really sure which way to start here. Let's start with the facts, and then we'll take it from there, because maybe the rumors become fact in the next 15 minutes while we have you here. But let's start off with the things we definitely know. We definitely know that Russell Wilson wouldn't be going on social media at midnight and posting Renegade without signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that is upcoming. So, Jacob, this is, probably, I would say, Wilson's last chance to be a starter in the NFL. He has played 12 seasons in the league. It's not like he's played 4 or 6 or 10. He's clearly on the back nine of his career. Do you think that he can be a great reclamation project for a Pittsburgh Steelers offense that really needs it, but hasn't looked anything like the fact that when they had Ben Roethlisberger and Bruce Arians, Jacob, they were just throwing the ball down the field. They didn't look anything like that. Can Russ do that with them?
I don't think Russell Wilson is going to get them back to that point necessarily, but I still think this is a good signing for the Steelers because at the very least, Russell Wilson is an upgrade over what they had last year. I know Mason Rudolph looked good at times at the end of the campaign, but Kenny Pickett hasn't really shown much during his NFL career. So you need someone with a proven track record in there, and Wilson provides that. And I know a lot of people will say, well, he hasn't played well the last couple of years with the Broncos, and that point is well taken. But we saw last year at times that he could be a little bit like almost like an Alex Smith type of quarterback who won't make critical turnovers or the big mistakes that he made during his first year in Denver. I think if he can do that with the Steelers and just give them some downfield passing ability outside the numbers to George Pickens, I think that this offense is going to be much better than it was last year. And they were already a team that could make a playoff run. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. So you just raise the floor a little bit more and maybe he gets hot at the right time and has a Joe Flacco Super Bowl run. I don't think that happens, but hey, I think he's still an upgrade for the Steelers, and he's only coming at the veteran minimum. So they're really not risking anything by bringing him on board.
Yeah, and yeah, you said it best. I mean, the money is not there right now. It doesn't have to be right there. But again, we'll see what happens in 2 years. Whether or not he ends up staying in Pittsburgh will be the question, depending on how the season goes. Baker Mayfield finally put it all together for a full season. He played great. He pushed the Bucs to the brink. I mean, basically, you would say that without Baker Mayfield, I mean, you could probably say this about a lot of quarterbacks, but without him, Bucs are nothing. Baker gets $50 million guaranteed. He is back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He does not head to free agency. And Jacob, you know, it's so interesting on social media to see people talking about, oh my gosh, how could you pay this guy so much money? Can you find any good quarterbacks in the NFL? I mean, the NFL is making more money than any league, right? So this is what the top players at their positions get paid. We better get used to it. If you're a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, you're getting $50 million. It's the most important position in sports.
Right. And the important thing with quarterback contracts, really any contracts in the NFL, is going to be how much of it is guaranteed. And you hit on it, $50 million guaranteed. That sounds like a lot on paper, but you have a lot of guys at the quarterback position making hundreds of millions of dollars. So in reality, this is a rather low risk deal for the Buccaneers. It's short term. Yes, Mayfield's getting $50 million guaranteed, but most of that is coming this year. I believe he has $30 million guaranteed this year and $20 million next year. So if the Buccaneers, if he regresses terribly without Dave Canales and he doesn't look like a starter, they can part with him and take a $20 million cap hit next year, or they could just say, all right, we'll see if he can bounce back after that. But realistically, among quarterback deals, yeah, this might look weird on paper considering he signed for 1 year, $4 million last free agent cycle. But like you said, he led the Buccaneers to a playoff win. He did a good job replacing Tom Brady, which is no easy feat, as the Patriots have learned in recent years. So they kind of had to keep him. And I think they did a good job getting a kind of mutually beneficial deal here that isn't too much risk for the Buccaneers, but compensates Mayfield fairly for what he did last year.
Now let's move on to the Super Bowl champs. The Kansas City Chiefs waste no time, $100 million for Chris Jones. I mean, just a short time ago, Jacob, they were couldn't figure out what to do and had to sign Chris Jones. Remember, he was sitting out games, but they made it happen. And look, this is really something that had to happen. I mean, Chris Jones, even with taking time off, sitting out of camp and doing everything that he did to get paid, he put his money where his mouth is, man. I mean, he played fantastic last year. This is one of those that I'm happy to see because the shelf life of these players in the NFL is so thin, especially at this position.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at Chris Jones and the impact he has on the Chiefs defense, it's almost unparalleled. It's like Aaron Donald maybe is in the same camp as him, but Jones just does so much for this Chiefs defense. He gets that interior pressure. They played him at defensive end 1 year, but they had to move him back inside because their interior defense was struggling too much with him outside, even though he was rushing the passer well. So he can do everything up front. And we saw this in the Super Bowl. He's the one who got the pressure on Brock Purdy before that third down pass in the red zone during the latest Super Bowl that made the 49ers kick a field goal in overtime. That really was a game-winning play for them in many ways. So he's just so important to that defense. He deserves every penny of this deal. And even if he regresses at the end of it as he gets older, the Chiefs will have no qualms about paying him this amount of money. And really, he should stay in his prime long-term. Aaron Donald has remained productive despite his aging on his deal worth about $100 million. So I could see Chris Jones taking a very similar path and continuing to dominate.
All right, let's get to two small trades that happen in the NFL, and then I want to dive in real quick to the rumors that we're seeing right now on social media. Mac Jones goes to Jacksonville for a late round pick. We ain't going to see him unless something happens to Trevor Lawrence. Jerry Jeudy did not work out at all in Denver, had multiple opportunities, I think, to make it happen. He couldn't make it happen with any of the quarterbacks that were there. He goes to Cleveland. Brighter future for either of these players? I'm just not sure, Jacob.
I think the future is a little bit brighter for Mac Jones in Jacksonville. As strange as it sounds, I think he just needed to get out of New England and get somewhere where he could kind of reset with an offensive-minded coach. And, you know, he's not going to be asked to carry a team that has flaws on offense. So I think that sitting out's going to do him well. Maybe he'll eventually turn into a high-end backup or low-end game manager starter. So I like that trade for him. I think it's a good spot. I think Judy to the Browns is interesting. I just don't know if he's ever going to develop the consistency with his route running and with his hands to kind of become anything more than a streaky wide receiver too. But I like the Browns taking a chance on him. I think that was a fine move for a couple of day 3 picks.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Cooper getting older, nothing to lose there. Okay, so The Athletic reported that Kirk Cousins in about an hour from now is going to start at least, talking with the Atlanta Falcons. It doesn't mean, Jacob, he's going to end up signing there, but I found that an interesting report because he did, the Vikings had every chance, I guess, right, to get it done, just like the Tampa Bay did with Baker. They couldn't do it, and so here we are.
Yeah, I think the Falcons are a real threat to sign Cousins. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes on a big deal there. The Falcons know they're not far from being a playoff team in their weak division, so if they can fix quarterback and get Kirk Cousins, I think that that's going to be their number one goal, so don't be surprised if they shell out a lot of money for him.
All right, Jacob, thanks again for coming on the show. Also, Josh Jacobs apparently in negotiations with the Raiders to stay too. Have a great day.
You too.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in. This is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. We got Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report going to join us here on the show. And by the way, just a quick update here from baseball. MLB.com is reporting that the manager of the New York Yankees, Aaron Boone, told reporters today that Garrett Cole is going to have an MRI on his throwing elbow this morning. So never want to hear that sort of news, but naturally, if news breaks, we give it to you here on the show. Again, Garrett Cole going to undergo an MRI. If we have an update for you, we'll give it to you later in the program. Prominent pitcher, of course, in Major League Baseball. All right, the big sports betting story of the week, of the year, definitely of the day. I don't know how to gauge this. Matthew Waters would know better from Legal Sports Report. It is the debut of sports betting opening up in North Carolina, 34 minutes away. As they say, place your bets, place your bets. It becomes official. We got Bet365, MGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, all the big names are getting ready to operate. This is always, Matthew, a big day, I think, for us, for you. A lot of coverage surrounding this. Who's going to make the first bet? What's it going to look like? What is the revenue going to be a month or two from now? And by the way, I have to say, kudos to North Carolina. Some great timing ahead of the conference championships, ahead of the NCAA tournament. I guess if you're going to set a benchmark in North Carolina to start, this is definitely the time to do so.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that, Craig. Look, it was a little disappointing when we found out earlier in the year that they weren't going to make it live before the Super Bowl, but they kind of knew that right up front and said that. And so we were always looking at March Madness for the launch. And, now you got the ACC tournament kicking up with North Carolina and Duke, the top two seeds. And, just from my perspective, that rivalry seems to be a little more alive than ever before, given the trip or no trip that we saw recently. So I think that this is going to be a really exciting time in North Carolina. It's a really exciting time in the industry, especially because, look, we have like more than 36 states already that have some form of sports betting. We're running out of states to launch. So it's definitely more novel now, and people get more excited for it. Now, sports betting had been in North Carolina already, if you remember. They actually approved it back in 2019, but it was only at retail casinos, at the tribal casinos that were there. That partnership was with Caesars, and Caesars actually launched on March 1st. If you were on tribal land, you could download the app and start betting right there. So technically, the first mobile bets have already been taken in North Carolina, but the big launch is coming, like you said, in about a half hour now. And you're right, all the big guys are there, and new faces too, right? Bet365, BetMGM, Caesars, DraftKings, FanDuel, they know the drill, right? We also have ESPN Bet and Fanatics. They're going to be launching for the first time at the starting line. So it's going to be a really good chance to gauge how they actually are doing in the market. Everybody has similar kind of promo offers. You can check all that out at legalsportsreport.com at noon. We'll have all of that outlined, but a lot of them are the same. So, it's going to come down to, do you want to bet with multiple books, or are you settling into a book already? I would expect, we know that sports betting users in America, they typically have over 2 sports betting accounts on average. So I would think that today is going to be a busy day for a lot of people if they didn't already start signing up in the week beforehand. The other interesting note about today, Craig, we're getting our first look at the Underdog Sportsbook. Underdog is one of those DFS companies that has been running into a little bit of trouble because they offer those prop parlays. Let's be honest, a lot of people in the market, in the industry, say that it just looks like a straight up parlay ticket sports betting with their DFS. They've been asked to leave states. They've pulled out of a number of states. Now they're here with full-on sports betting, and they're doing it a little different. The early signs, screenshots that I've seen, it looks like they're using more of the DFS kind of language in their odds instead of an actual sports book. So looks like they're really targeting a specific kind of player here. But it's gonna be fun to see these first couple of revenue reports, how just everything is shaking out. And you mentioned what that revenue could be. Craig, we're expecting in the first 12 months, Legal Sports Report projects $7 billion in first-year wagers. Wow. I have a piece up on LSR right now talking about how much of that could be basketball, because we know that the Tar Heel State is just crazy about basketball. So it's going to be fun. This is going to be a fun month for everybody in North Carolina. The fact that you have Duke and UNC doing so well could definitely skew these numbers a little bit when we look at them at the beginning. But obviously, you don't learn everything about a market in the first 1, 2, 3 months, right? We need to see a little bit more and just see how it's going to shake out. But honestly, this is going to be a really, really good look at ESPN Bet, Fanatics, and Underdog. Remember, ESPN Bet has this deal with Disney. Penn and Disney have this deal that after the third year, Disney can back out of if it's not doing what they thought it would, if it's not hitting these market share projections that they have, which should be somewhere between 10 and 20%. We saw ESPN Bet launch and they were getting around 7%. Now that's good, but also remember how heavily that was backed by promos, right? So this is going to be a really good battleground state to see just who is coming up, who can maybe take share from the big guys. The other thing you got to remember is that FanDuel's NBA product is top of the class. If you're betting NBA, you typically go to FanDuel. And so are we going to see an early lead from FanDuel just because we're launching, in the middle of the NBA season right now with the playoffs about to come up? So there's a lot going on in North Carolina right now. Everybody's really excited for it. And, what is it, 28 minutes now? Those first bets will be rolling in.
Yeah, no, I mean, a big day, for North Carolina. I would guess outside of maybe New York and New Jersey, maybe Philadelphia, that North Carolina's revenue for the month of March as a first-time operator breaks some sort of record. That would be my prediction here on the show, but we'll see in the end. All right, let's real quick get to this because you mentioned Fanatics. Fanatics was one of those companies last year that if you logged on to their site or you went to their app, you were able to actually watch live sports programming. And so this was sort of a, revolutionary. The company that started this was called Genius Sports, and they called it Bet Vision. And we're getting some numbers into how successful they are because I think there's going to be some copycats coming here, Matt, if this ends up working with the other operators, DraftKings, FanDuel, the ones that don't stream live games. I thought it was a great idea at the time. Does it seem to be working?
It does seem to be working, Craig. Genius is a publicly listed company, so we get a lot of great data from them. And although they only broke out data from FanDuel and not the 3 other partners at this point, we still learned a lot. About 76% of handle and 50% of total bets were made by streaming customers. Those were in-play bets. And you're starting to approach European levels of in-play betting once you get to those figures, right? About 70% in Europe is the rough figure that we have for bets that actually come while the game's going on. And that other 30% is the pre-match betting. Another interesting thing, total handle from the streamers grew 3 times over the second half of the season compared to the first. Now, that also has to do with just how the product is coming along, right? This is a living and breathing thing from Genius. They're improving it daily. They're adding more to it as we go along. And so it doesn't completely shock me that we're seeing, more being bet on the backside of that. Now, unique streamers at FanDuel since launch week more than doubled across the full season. And this is one of the most important points, Craig. This is what we talked about when this first launched. The average latency all season was just 5 seconds. That is huge when you're talking about in-play betting and you're talking about streaming from a source that is not over the air, right? So that was probably the number that jumped off the page to me the most. The fact that you could be watching this in the app, you can be betting while you're still watching the game, and guess what? You're not that far behind it. That was what everybody was afraid would happen, a 30, 40-second latency here, and it's just not happening. Now, we're going to see how this translates to other sports. More sports are coming out this year, and it shouldn't take a whole lot to implement that, CEO Mark Locke said. Now, you talked about the other guys jumping on, and this is interesting to me because basically Locke said that they have to convince the other operators that it's worth implementing Bet Vision before any of the other things that they're working on right now. He said that these companies, they have a thick pipeline of updates and stuff that they want to get through. products that they want to add. And so they really have to go in there and say, look, this is what you need. This is why you need it. And this is why it has to be first of the line. I think eventually we're going to get to a point where more of the big operators offer this than not. Everybody has to deal with Genius anyway because they're the only provider of the data. So, everybody's already in bed with Genius. And this looks like it's just doing gangbusters early on. And so I'm excited to see what this can do for baseball. I mean, that's one thing that we've talked about a lot, the in-play betting on baseball when it comes down to batters and in the outfield and everything. Now you don't have to leave the screen. You can keep watching it. I think that's going to be huge for baseball betting numbers.
Yeah, it's certainly, listen, it's going to be a fun season to see how that dynamic changes too. Hey, Matt, great to have you here on the show. Really appreciate it. We'll catch up again with you next week here on NewsWire. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. Looks like a new contract for Michael Pittman of the Indianapolis Colts, 3 years, $70 million. So he ends up staying with the Colts. That's being reported right now by ESPN. All right, coming up next, four-time Manager of the Year, Buck Showalter is in the house to preview the baseball season with Buck next.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Always going to be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. So great to preview the baseball season with four-time Manager of the Year Buck Showalter. Has always been good to me, been good to the show. We're going to bring him back. It's great to catch up, Buck. Great to have you. I know a lot of family time being spent with you now, and certainly this year. I want to get to this year for you too, because that's really important for us. If you're going to tell us what you're going to do this year, TV, and exactly what. But great to have you back here on NewsWire. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I appreciate it. We all try to act like we're so busy. Nobody's that busy, right?
Yeah, well, you've always been good to me, and I do appreciate that. So let's start off with you first before we get to the baseball season, because I think, I was looking, did you break any news as far as where you're going to be doing analysis this season? Are you going to take a year off from managing? Have you made the choice yet as to what you want to do?
Well, first of all, that's assuming I have a choice, right? I've committed to the Major League Baseball Network. I'm going to do some work with them. Nothing enough to get me out of the house and stay married. I've been married 41 years. My wife tells me it's because I go somewhere every February and March during the season. So I'll keep that in mind. I've got a couple other things going on, but nothing that won't keep me from spending some time. I've got 4 grandsons, and I'm really enjoying them a lot right now. But we'll see where life takes us. Baseball's been real good to me.
Yeah, and you've been at the top of the game wherever you have been. Most recently, of course, it was with the New York Mets. Thought we would do a quick preview of the upcoming Mets season. What a turn of events, Buck, over the last year. I got to tell you, I mean, we're sitting in this chair. I'm sitting in this chair last year talking. Everyone's talking about how the Mets have won the offseason and all these signings and all these players are brought in, and then you have to deal with injuries like I think I've never seen before. From the pitching staff and in baseball in general. And now all of a sudden, it's like things are being, run a different way with the Mets here. And, injuries, still unfortunately there with Senga, so to speak. But do you think this year the Mets can kind of, get a little bit back to where we thought they were going to be? Because none of the projections really say that going into the season.
Oh, without a doubt. If Marte coming back, the guy that hit second in a 100-game season really didn't play much last year. Probably the best closer in baseball when healthy's coming back. I tell you, a big move that's going to help them is Quintana coming back. We missed him for 2/3 of the season. He was going to pitch between Scherzer and Verlander, and that never really transpired. But he did show everybody what he was capable of. It's the pitching, and I think the expectations, young players like Beatty and Vientos and Alvarez, I think a full season, it's that second year, they get a taste of it, and you find out whether they're going to bite as a big dog as opposed to a puppy. And I just think Jeff McNeil's going to have a better year, and Pete Alonso's in a contract year, so you know what happens there. Nemo's solid. It's really it's about the what ifs with all these teams. It's playing baseball 7 days a week for 7 months. It's just not a normal thing to do to your body. Severino's got a chance to jump forward. Minaya, we know what he's capable of. That they're really going to try to upgrade some defensively in the outfield and with Bader. And there's a lot of good things there, but the depth is what's going to be important because not everybody's going to hold up. If you ask every manager right now, what could you pick? One thing to have in your team, he'd say the health of the team that we project. I'd love to go back and see how many times you actually go on the field with that team you project coming out of spring training.
Yeah, it almost never happens. The Mets, thought Senga would be on the opening day roster. He's not going to be there today. We're getting news today. Buck, I don't know if you saw this yet. You don't need to comment on it at all, but Garrett Cole, according to Aaron Boone, is having an MRI on his elbow today. These things just pop up out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden can certainly set you back. And you mentioned Marte. I thought that was a key guy being out last year. I'm hearing great things, by the way, with him going into the spring. As the NL East, Buck, sort of shapes up. You guys were fighting with the Braves and the Phillies last season. The Phillies were a slow starter, fast finisher. Braves were great start to finish, but couldn't get over the hump in the postseason. Do you think that script plays itself out the same way this year? Atlanta goes on, they win their 100 games, and then maybe they take that next step. Do the Phillies have it in them to fight the Braves for the division? And we know how great they've been in the postseason. It's unquestionable.
Without a doubt. And, I know it's not intentional, but the Marlins aren't going away. The pitching's too good. The depth's too good. The players are a year removed from competing. The Phillies and the Braves are going to be there. The people that they have great depth that is going to allow them to withstand some things that come along your way. And let's face it, if you force me to really look at just one thing, I'd really look at the team's bullpens, because that allows that consistency and, quite frankly, morale that a team needs. Because when leads don't matter, and when you go ahead and there's certain things that don't matter, it really weighs on a team's mentality. I mean, year before last, we knew if we had the lead after the seventh inning, the game was over between Edwin and a couple other guys in our bullpen. And I think there's such a confidence and a given. Players like to have that in their back pocket. So I think Philly, as far as the bullpen goes, that's where they took a major step forward last year. Atlanta's always been solid there. And they have two guys that can manipulate the bullpen. They know what they're doing with the bullpen. And I think that's key too. But those two teams aren't going away. They're the real deal. They're fun to watch. Their managers and general managers get the mentality you have to play, especially in Philadelphia. They understand the type of player that prospers there. You see them acquire a Whit Merrifield. Fits in perfect. Great what-if player for a one-year commitment. Those are the type of things that really good clubs do. And Dahl's a good defender. Turnbull, they've got some depth there. And let's face it, because if you sign a player like Zach Wheeler or whoever, you sign some of these guys, in order to get that type of commitment, that type of money, they have a lot of wear and tear on them. They do. Whether they come from Japan, whether they come from, it's buyer beware. You're paying sometimes 5 years to get 3. And it's such a volatile situation trying to project pitching. You talked about Garrett Cole today. We talked about Edwin Diaz. Your whole thing changes with one day. So ideally, your depth would come from within the organization, but unfortunately, I spend a lot of time watching teams off the field moves that may not be as sexy as some people may think, that put that depth in place. Let's face it, AAA's become kind of a taxi squad for the big leagues now. It's not your real prospect situation is usually in AA.
Now, Buck, you spent a lot of time in Maryland, obviously, and in Texas as well, and you did a great job as the Orioles manager before they decided to sort of start things over. I want to get your thoughts on the Orioles going into the season, because, Buck, they just seem like an offensive juggernaut with all of these prospects that they have, one after the other. Jackson Holiday looks like he is ready for the big leagues already. They have other, players too that are prepared as well. I mean, I guess, Buck, take me back to the time where you saw all that happen, what you thought then, and did you think that the plan could be executed, at least on paper, as well as it looks like it is now?
Well, it's tough on players. I mean, on teams and cities, it's not there for everybody. I think there's 13 or 14 players on that 40-man roster were there when they got there, still on that roster, whether it be a Mullins or a Hayes. I can go on and on. And but it's tough on the fans when you have to do the things to draft in the first 4 or 5 people in the country. That's what Houston did. It's what Baltimore did. You look back through it, and you're buying some time. I'm very proud of what they've done. It was a tough row for them to get there. I really respect them staying with Brandon through thick and thin and letting him reap the benefits. But when you're drafting where they're drafting, you should be create a lot of good young depth. And I'm hoping that the new ownership, that they can hold on to these young men once they get to a point where they can leave. But we'll see. A lot's got to be worked out. But I will say this. I'd be careful that, when you're not the little engine that could, and you're not sneaking up on that kind of everybody, and the first year that it is expected of you is a different dynamic. And I think talent always plays out, but the mentality and the emotion of it, when, believe me, they're not going to sneak up on Tampa and the Yankees and the Reds. I mean, they know what's coming. And they're going to get everybody's best bolt, but they're very talented. It'll be by the pitching depth. They've got some very talented young players. But people talk about, well, they drafted in the first 3 or 4 picks. Well, they picked the right guys, and some of these guys were in the second round, the third round, the fourth round. It's one thing to have a high pick; it's another thing to pick the right guy. I mean, we see it in the NFL all the time, and even in the NBA. And in baseball, you don't have a combine to put these guys through. I'll say this, the biggest jump in professional sports is from the minor leagues in baseball to the big leagues in baseball. They come out of college football and they're all pro the first year. Heck, they come out of high school and play in the NBA. In baseball, there's an apprenticeship. There is an apprenticeship that players serve, and especially with pitching. What you see in September of last year is not what you may see in June of the following year. And you got to keep that in mind. But there'll be a different mentality for Baltimore this year. They're going to be a little more hunted than they have been in the past. But I think they have the talent to overcome that. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, should be a fun season for them. Buck, interesting. We have 2 minutes left. You mentioned the NFL and the NBA. We're seeing so much news today in the NFL because of free agency. And I'm sure you're well aware there are still some prominent names unsigned in baseball. This offseason was sort of a drag, Buck. I went to the winter meetings expecting a lot of noise, news. Nothing really happened. I guess for people on my side of the camera, Buck, it's sort of distressing here. I wish free agency got as much buzz as I'm getting in the NFL, which is what we're leading with every story. Do you see a fix to that ever coming?
Well, it looks like, don't get me started. I've got some kind of radical ideas, but who knows? I think as far as judging the market, whether it's an agent or a player, I think people are looking at the history of commitments long-term to pitchers with a lot of wear and tear on their elbow and shoulder and realize it's a tough investment. It's a tough investment. You can't win without it. But, all these guys that are still out there and what they thought they were going to get, and now they're running the jeopardy even starting spring training on time. So I'm not casting aspirations at anybody. I just think judging the market, and I think some people are stepping back going, I'm not so sure this is a wise investment physically.
Yeah, no, it's a tough dynamic. Okay, 30 seconds before you go. So, will you manage again, Buck, in the big leagues if offered? You still have that itch?
That's not up to me. I'm at peace either way, and I hope nobody gets fired. I am not coveting somebody's job, and I hope everybody has a good season. It's just life's too short. I see these guys clamoring over other people's jobs who certainly have them. I'm not going to be a part of that.
All right. Well, enjoy your grandkids, the farm, and you've always been great to me. So thank you again for coming here on the show and breaking everything down. And we'll watch you on MLB Network this season, breaking it down, and maybe somewhere else. You'll let us know. Thanks again for coming on.
You never know. Okay. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
All right. Buck Showalter joining us, 4-time Manager of the Year in Major League Baseball. We'll take one final timeout here on the show. And when we come back next, again, Russell Wilson is headed to the Steel City. We'll talk about his introduction into what was going to be a very challenging season, most likely, given the fact he's on a one-year show-me deal. We'll break that down for you next right here on NewsWire. So stay with us here on SportsGrid. We'll be back after these messages after this.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Scott Farrell's going to have a busy day today at 3 o'clock Eastern. There's a lot of news going on. We got NFL free agency, potential MRI for Garrett Cole coming based on what Aaron Boone said, the manager of the Yankees, on his right elbow. So that's certainly huge news. We'll see what the outcome is of that. Extensions for Michael Pittman, 3 years, $70 million with the Colts. So plenty to get to, and Farrell will recap it all at 3 o'clock Eastern, and I'll take care of tomorrow morning with whatever happened after we leave you here today. But I did want to leave you with this. Hey, he posted it last night at midnight. Russell Wilson throwing the Renegade tune by Styx out there. He's signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their offense since Ben Roethlisberger has been dreadful. Since Bruce Arians left, it has been so-so. All of a sudden, Russell Wilson going to be the savior in Pittsburgh? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to work at all in Pittsburgh. Now, listen, Russell Wilson, probably a Hall of Famer, winning Super Bowls, great in Seattle, but what have you seen the last 2 years in Denver that so much focus is going to be on this guy? It's like the best of what's out there, not named Kirk Cousins. But if you really want the quarterback, isn't Cousins the guy to go for? Or are you just not looking to spend the kind of money that Cousins is going to want? Because to me, and even Baker Mayfield, I think, probably better signing there. But what do I know? Russell Wilson signs with Pittsburgh. All right, that will do it for our show today. Thanks again to Buck Showalter for coming on the program. Also, Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report, Jacob Camenker from Sporting News, our associate producer Frank, and our producer Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. Be right back here with you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thought we'd be doing a lot of conference basketball discussion with games later today, but instead it's a lot of NFL news. We got big baseball news as well. So keep it locked right here for all of the breaking news here at SportsGrid and how it affects the betting odds. That's why it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the early line coming up next, followed by Farrell Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. I'll see you tomorrow for our next edition of NewsWire.